The drama surrounding the WNBA has reached a boiling point. A moment where the tension is no longer contained behind podiums or politely worded press releases. It is spilling into the public eye, carried in the exhausted voices of the players who feel like they have spent years performing miracles on the court while begging for basic respect off of it. When Aya Wilson stepped in front of the cameras on Good Morning America and calmly stated that players are tired of being told to be grateful, it hit like a thunderclap. It wasn't anger. It wasn't rebellion. It was truth spoken by someone who has spent her entire career carrying the weight of a league that has repeatedly asked for more while giving very little back. And now the clock is ticking. The 2026 WNBA season hangs in the balance as the current collective bargaining agreement approaches its expiration date. For the first time in league history, players are openly discussing a complete work stoppage, not out of spite or ego but out of necessity. This is not just another labor dispute. This is a reckoning decades in the making. The players have drawn a line in the sand, and the league knows it. After months of quiet meetings and silent frustration, the negotiations have ballooned into a public standoff. The players are demanding what they believe is fair compensation for the value they generate. The league, still restructuring its identity and finances in the middle of an explosive growth spurt, is struggling to meet those demands. And the gap between the two sides is enormous. This isn't a disagreement about small raises or minor schedule adjustments. This is a battle over the fundamental future of women's basketball and whether the people responsible for building it will finally be paid in proportion to their impact. At the center of this storm is the swelling uncertainty surrounding Caitlin Clark, the most important figure to enter the WNBA in decades. As the players fight for better conditions, Clark's own situation has become a symbol of why the push for reform is so urgent. Her series of injuries over the summer raised red flags across the league. Back-to-back groin strains, lower body mobility issues, a recovery timeline that never quite added up. Fans and analysts began to question whether she was being pushed too hard too fast, and whether the demands of a league without universal charter travel and proper scheduling were already wearing her down. Then came the startling revelation that Clark had met with a doctor outside the Indiana Fever organization, leaving the coaching staff waiting for updates that never came. The silence around her condition became its own story, feeding into the wider narrative of a league struggling to care for its most valuable assets. But the deeper issue runs far beyond one player's injuries. This fight is about the system itself. It has been nearly 2 months since Nafisa Collier stood before reporters and broke the unspoken rule that WNBA stars should remain diplomatic. She detonated the conversation with honesty, calling out leadership failures and miscommunication that had festered behind the scenes for too long. The reaction around the league was immediate. Players who normally stayed quiet began to speak up. They were tired of being dismissed, tired of being undervalued, tired of being told the league was growing while their share remained unchanged. The numbers tell the story clearly. Under the current structure, WNBA players receive 9.3% of league revenue. NBA players receive roughly 50% of their league's revenue. The players are not asking to be paid like superstars in the men's league. They are asking for fairness. They are asking for a percentage that reflects their contributions to the business they are helping build. And after a season that saw unprecedented ratings, sold-out arenas, massive sponsorship deals, and the most significant surge in women's basketball interest in modern history, they believe they have the leverage to demand it. But while the players voice their frustrations, the league is pointing to its own realities. They are offering increases in salary, with the maximum potentially rising to $850,000 and the minimum nearly tripling. Yet even those increases fail to address the underlying issue. The players want revenue sharing tied to performance, not static caps that fail to scale with the league's explosive growth. They want universal charter travel. They want better training facilities. They want treatment and scheduling that protect their bodies. To them, these are not luxuries. These are necessities for athletes competing at the highest level. The disconnect became even more visible when Aya Wilson referenced the mindset that has plagued the league for years. Be grateful. Be patient. Be thankful for whatever you receive. That mentality may have served the early years of the WNBA when survival was the priority, but the era of gratitude as policy is over. The players understand their value. They see the ticket sales. They see the ratings. They see the corporate partnerships rolling in because of their performance. And they are no longer willing to accept a structure that grows richer while they remain stagnant. The generational divide within the sport makes this moment even more dramatic. The Trailblazers of the early 2000s built the league out of pure passion. often accepting wages that barely covered basic expenses. But this new generation is business-savvy, globally connected, and unwilling to sacrifice their health and financial future for tradition. They understand leverage. They understand branding. They understand the global market. And they understand that the WNBA's newfound momentum gives them a power they have never held before. The tension surrounding Caitlin Clark's situation feeds into this perfectly. Her injuries, her exhaustion, her immense pressure, and her massive commercial value all highlight the stakes. She is the engine driving the next chapter of women's basketball. She is the catalyst who transformed ratings overnight. She is the player who made networks compete for broadcasting rights. And if the league cannot protect her, cannot value her, cannot invest in her, then the players believe it cannot be trusted to protect anyone else either. And now, as the CBA deadline approaches, the league is facing a challenge unlike anything in its history. The players have made it clear that they are prepared to sit out the entire 2026 season if they do not receive a deal that reflects their value. That is not a bluff. That is a declaration. The WNBA, which finally found its footing in the mainstream sports world, is only one misstep away from losing all the momentum it fought for. Fans are watching. Sponsors are watching. College stars are watching. And the league stands at a crossroads where one wrong decision could send it spiraling into uncertainty. The question now is not whether the players are willing to walk. It is whether the league is willing to listen. If you made it this far, I want to hear your thoughts. Are the WNBA players justified in holding out for a larger share of revenue? Is the league doing enough to protect stars like Caitlin Clark? And what would a full work stoppage mean for the momentum women's basketball has built? Let me know in the comments below, and if you want to stay locked in on every twist of this unfolding story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss the next deep dive.